Recording?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. I want to thank everybody for attending. Hopefully we'll all stay here through the meeting and won't get X'd out by technical difficulties. I hope everybody's well. And again, I want to thank you for attending. First thing I would like to do is call for approval of the minutes of the October 21st, 2021 meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions, anything anybody would like to add? There
I
being
so moved the minutes.
second,
Second.
all in favor, raise hand.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask President Christian. Don, could you give us your report?
Sure. So a couple things. I'll touch base on the perennial subject for the last 20 months of COVID management. We've had a slight uptick the past couple of weeks, we think due to Halloween gatherings. But still, as of today, we have only 12 active student cases and 5 employee cases. And that's, that's up a bit from a few weeks ago, but consistent with what seems to be happening across the SUNY system. We're going to have testing available for students and employees who want to be assured that they're negative before they travel home to be with family and friends over the Thanksgiving holiday. And we're encouraging everyone to test when they return to campus for the completion of the semester. We're really encouraged that 5 to 11-year-olds are now eligible for vaccine, and that there's a pill to treat the virus. These are all positive signs along with our relatively low infection and vaccination rates. I'll touch base here a little bit on budget, just a couple updates. Michelle's not here, so we won't have a full budget report as we typically do. One of the pieces of news that I can share is that the deans, the provost, and the vice presidents for administration and finance and for enrollment management have been meeting regularly to plan for what we're calling strategic recruitment. How we fill employee vacancies and assess resource needs to grow enrollment to return to pre-COVID levels. We had a really successful prospective student open house last month, which was encouraging about student and parent interest in attending SUNY New Paltz. And we've implemented some new strategies to connect more effectively with prospective students and applicants. I will note that, and I think those of you who are involved with state and local government are clearly aware of this, that the SUNY budget will be developed over the next few months. SUNY's begun planning advocacy for increased state support. The capital funds, as you know, are typically separate from operating budgets, and we have submitted a $203 million capital request to address the constraints that aging infrastructure and our very small footprint compared with other campuses has on our offerings. So we're hoping to continue improving our facilities. Brief comment on fundraising success. This third quarter of this fiscal year, we've raised more than $3.7 million. I think Erica, we're all pleased and surprised with that. That's in effect the average of what we raised each year during the campaign, even though the campaign has ended. And so that total, along with each annual fundraising during the campaign, includes bequest intentions that won't be realized until the donor passes away. We've had some meetings with the student leaders of the Asian and Pacific Islander Student Alliance with support from Student Affairs and the Asian Studies program. The student group organized a virtual event on November 3 that was entitled Community Conversation: Asian Hate in America. This was designed to be a safe space for students to share their personal stories and experiences. And we were there to listen, which is all that we did. We're looking forward to continuing those conversations and to developing greater support for those students. And we were honored to be invited into that space. We want to continue that collaboration. Some of us attended and spoke at last month's swearing-in ceremony for former New Paltz University Police Department Chief Mary Ridiak as the State University Police Commissioner. Mary was the first woman to serve as chief of New Paltz UPD, and she was only one of only 3 women at the time, and she's the first woman to be appointed as commissioner. You may be interested in looking at my last monthly report to the faculty. I think you all received that. And I shared some comments from Mary's speech about the special nature of university policing that I thought really captured so well the work and the philosophy of our university police department. A couple other things about UPD that I'll share. One is that last night SUNY announced the recipients of the 2021 University Police Awards for lieutenants, officers, and staff who played a key role in life-saving events this past year, and others for outstanding professional service. One of our lieutenants and 3 officers were recognized for their life-saving intervention, and another lieutenant and 4 officers were recognized for acts that enhanced the operation of our university police department. Another piece about university police that I'll mention that's very cool is that several of our officers took part in, I think it was a 100-mile bike ride titled Stock the Shelves. It was to raise funding and support for the SUNY New Paltz Food Pantry, and they raised $2,300 for that effort. So it was a really cool contribution. Last thing I'll mention here is that this morning I spoke at a breakfast meeting of the Dutchess County Regional Chamber of Commerce. I have spoke previously to that group of business and civic leaders, and I emphasized the role that SUNY New Paltz plays as an educational, cultural, and civic, what I call anchor institution in Hudson Valley. I shared some information about our business, student, alumni, and employee connections to Dutchess County, spoke about the high caliber of educational offerings, our economic impact, which that group was clearly interested in, and our close ties to Dutchess Community College. And that seemed to be very well received. I was pleased with the level of interest and support about what I had to say. I will share with this group that I will give a similar presentation to the Ulster County Regional Chamber of Commerce on December 10, and it would be delightful to have any and all of you there as well. So with that, I'll stop and see if we have questions and time for questions if Eli allows.
Sure. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I'd like to make a few. First, the staff, administration, and certainly the students should be complimented on how well they've handled COVID. It's almost amazing from start up until now how well things have been done. And I know it's because of the policies, their implementation, and the vigilance by everybody. And I'm very impressed by it, and I'm sure the campus community is as well. I don't know if the public at large is aware of how well things have been handled at New Paltz, but you should all be complimented on that. Likewise for the University Police, they stay out of the news, and so their only news is all the good things they do to help in the community and help on campus and to actually be lifesavers. And we're very, very fortunate in how well things are handled on campus. And it's sometimes taken for granted, but it's not a given. There's all different types of things that can result in controversies and problems. And it seems that things run very, very, very smoothly. I'll hold off on my remarks till after Erica talks, because Erica is going to be talking about fundraising. And I'd like to mention a few things later in the meeting, but we have Erica Marks, our Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations, who is a star in every sense of the word, because she has done a marvelous job. Yes.
Before you go on, I just would like to encourage, I agree with you said about the COVID, and I hope that Don and the administration is keeping a blueprint that they could leave behind in case ever something similar should ever happen again. Because it seems as if it's been a very good process, and I hope they've documented it and can leave behind a guideline for others to follow.
That's a good thought, Ron. I appreciate you suggesting that. We do have written plans that largely guided our process, and we've been documenting in my monthly reports and in other ways some of the actions that we've taken and the ways that we've had to pivot. So compiling all those together is a blueprint for future pandemics, heaven forbid, is a really good suggestion.
Yeah, it certainly is, and unfortunately, it's probably something that should really be on the forefront throughout our society, but most especially a successful program like New Paltz, it should be encapsulated and kept. And unfortunately, the way things are, it's probably not a one-off. And so, thank you for the hard work and thank you for the good suggestion, Rob. And now, any other comments, questions? Okay, so Erica, the star of fundraising, you've done an amazing job and you have such terrific momentum. And I know that we've gotten a couple of documents explaining naming opportunities. I don't know if anybody's going to take advantage of that, but there are so many opportunities to participate in fundraising. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about the naming opportunities and how that impacts not just the council, but the community as well.
Sure. Thank you, Eli, and thanks for your really kind comments earlier. You know, when you work in philanthropy, the most important thing is to connect to a good organization. And this is, I just feted my 8th year at New Paltz and never have had a moment of regret. It's a joy to work with everybody that I come into contact with. It's really been great, and I learn a lot as well. I'd like to see if I can figure out, I'm going to share my screen here. So and I tried to get rid of the, let's see. Okay, is that working? Can you see that? No. Can you see that now? Is anyone seeing sharing my screen?
It's starting to share.
Oh, good.
Yes, takes a little while.
There
So, so I tried to get rid of that thing so that you couldn't see in advance what I was going to say, but I can't figure out how to do it. So whatever. Okay. All right. So one thing I haven't learned is how to do PowerPoints very well.
No, we've lost everything.
Now it's just a
Lots?
gray box. So
You're kidding.
I think you have to go back and not do the slide view,
right.
right? Maybe.
Okay. Okay. So wait. I'm sorry. Stop sharing. Okay. Okay. So let's try this again. You see, Eli, you jinxed me now. I think, okay, let's try this again. Open this up. I think it's just a very simple PowerPoint that will, why is this? Okay, so I can see it here. Now I'm going to share. You're right, I have a couple of options.
Here it comes.
Did that work?
It's coming.
It's really tiny. But
Okay. How's that?
there you go. That's good.
Okay. Don't look on the left.
Okay.
I don't know how to hide that. So, so thank you for the introduction. You were sent 3 documents, and before I get into that, and I'm not going to take you through too much detail because you will probably not stay awake for that, but I will just want to give you a brief overview about philanthropy in the last decade at New Paltz. When I started here 8 years ago, a lot of wheels had already been put in motion thanks to President Christian and others. And we had been raising about $1.5 million a year. And we're looking at whether or not we could do a campaign, what's typically called a capital campaign, which is not necessarily for capital. And what we realized is that we needed to do an experiment. And so we set ourselves a $10 million 3-year goal to see if we could effectively double what we were raising. And so we did manage to do that. And so after doing that and engaging alumni, and there are a lot of pieces to this, but I won't take you through the details today, we realized that we were able to expand into a larger campaign. And so we took a couple of years to prepare and essentially bundled what we had already done into what was called a silent phase of a campaign and launched a 7-year, $23 million Soaring Higher campaign, which is the first ever real official campaign for SUNY New Paltz. And after 7 years, we concluded June 30. We had set our goal at 23 million. We ended up at 24.7 million, which was 107% of the goal, and felt really great about all of that. And during the campaign, we had three, what I will call kind of sub goals. We had what we call providing opportunity, which is scholarships and experiential learning. And we didn't quite make that goal. We were around $10 million of 11.5 million. Then we had what we call building capacity, so program support. And we went over that goal by about $3 million. And then our Fund for New Paltz, which supports everything from runs our alumni programs and our magazine to lectures that all students come to for free, including our distinguished speaker that we had last week and so forth. So that very important programs, and we kind of hit that right on the mark. And so as we continue, as we wait to welcome a new president in the fall, we are focusing on scholarships and experiential learning, the area that we know we still need a lot of funding. And I will just mention as an aside that many people have asked me how they can make a gift in honor of President Christian. And we have talked about it, and he would really love it if you decided you wanted to do that, that you do that in his honor and give it to a scholarship of your choice. Or, for example, our Educational Opportunity Program, EOP, has a $50,000 challenge grant right now that we have to make by December 31st. We raise it, we get it. It's an anonymous donor. So you're welcome to give to that as well, or instead of, but I just wanted to briefly mention that. And so that's very exciting. And you heard Don say that the fundraising this year has been quite astonishing, and I do expect that this will be the best year and record for New Paltz, which I would say that donors, people who care about our students and about this college, are extraordinary, and it astonishes me every day. I mean, in a good way. It's wonderful and inspires me, I should say. So going back when we started our campaign, we realized that some people were starting to ask about buildings, and and about naming, not buildings, because most of our donors don't have that level of resource, but about spaces inside buildings. And we realized that we needed a kind of a map so that somebody didn't come to us and say, I'd like to name the such and such laboratory, how much is it? And we wouldn't know. And so we just started to look into what the policies and procedures were and mapping this out. And as you see from the 3 documents you got, Shelley Wright and Lisa Davis kindly sent you the 2 documents from SUNY, the general guidelines and the process. One outlines the policy, and one outlines the process. And they're kind of dense documents. To my knowledge, they haven't been updated since 2010, but they still govern all of the SUNYs. And it's what we base, and when I say we, both the college and the foundation, SUNY New Paltz Foundation, we base all our policies on this first. And so this is the foundation for what we do. And College Council, you are, as you know, responsible for deciding whether or not we name or unname buildings and public spaces, the actual buildings. And so we went through this process with College Council a few years ago when we renamed our Hasbrook quad, and now named for various local natural landmarks. And that was a process where College Council, after hearings from campus and the cabinet and the president weighing in, College Council voted on that. And based on their vote, that went up to the SUNY chancellor and then the board of trustees. And that would be the process whenever we had a building or a public outdoor space to be named. And we've unfortunately never had that opportunity. Part of the reason is that we don't need to raise money generally to build buildings on our campus. We get that money from the state. Sometimes it's not enough, but we do get that from the state, and that's not, and again, many of the people who attended New Paltz came from modest backgrounds and may not have that kind of inherited family wealth that maybe a lot of people at private institutions have name buildings. And people have other interests like scholarships. So our gift naming opportunities, which you also got a document that really the document that you got called Procedures for Naming Spaces summarizes a whole bunch of very, very lengthy documents, and it boils it down into a really easy to understand summary step by step that shows you what happens when we need to name an interior space or an exterior business, a business building. So you have buildings, rooms, grounds, facilities, you have existing facilities, you have new construction and major renovations, and then you have this approval process. So I already mentioned the approval process for buildings and grounds. And by the way, I will mention that any gift of $1 million or more does get approved by the chancellor and generally by the SUNY trustees. So it goes straight to the chancellor whenever we are actually accepting a cash gift, not a bequest intention, but a cash gift that comes in, or we're negotiating that. That's something that we work with directly with the chancellor. But when we are naming interiors of buildings, physical facilities inside, I wanted to share a little bit with you about how that works. So typically what happens, and you'll see this in your Procedures for Naming Spaces document that you can look at it at any point, the donor will come to us and say, my husband passed away. This is a real scenario. He really loved the library. I was wondering what it would cost to name one of those little spaces inside the Sojourner Truth Library for him, to put up a little plaque. Could we do that? And how much is it? And the way that we figured out the buildings and how much to charge for them is that we looked at predominantly at new construction or newly renovated construction, because those are the places that there was the most interest. And SUNY requires to name a building that you raise around 50% of that new construction or renovation costs. Now, I will tell you, I've seen a lot of wiggle room around the SUNY system. I think partly because, again, it's not that typical that we name buildings. So I would say there's negotiations that are possible, but those are the general guidelines. And so for example, for the library, it was renovated. We knew how much it costs. We took 50% of that cost. We looked at the square footage inside the library. We figured out the cost per square foot. And then we looked at every space and we counted the square footage and we multiplied. And that's how we came up with a number for what it would cost to name that space. That got tweaked a bit. If you have 20 classrooms, it's a little bit more of a bargain than if you only have one thing, such as the science hall amphitheater, which is one of a kind. And so we came up with some menus, and those were reviewed by the foundation board and by our gift acceptance committee and the board and cabinet, and also by the people who inhabit those spaces, looking at those. The Dean of Science and Engineering. Does this make sense? Did we miss anything? And so those are what we had as our guide for donors. Once a donor says, okay, that's great, I'm interested, we will work with the inhabitants of the building. Again, in this case that I mentioned, it was the Dean of the library. We would work with facilities because if we want to put up a plaque, we have to make sure that the plaque is according to all of our style guidelines. There are lots of involvement. And the donor ended up naming a nook. There's a little study nook for her husband, Robert Maurer, who was an alum of the college. And so what do we do with that money? It goes into the program fund for the building that the space is located in, to help with the library put into their acquisition fund, so they can purchase manuscripts and so forth. Here are the buildings for which we mapped out naming opportunities for interior spaces. And you'll see that a lot of these have had some construction recently or a lot of interest. And we have some naming already. We have the Pasternak Trading Room at the School of Business, which is that money from that is an endowment for the School of Business, and it's used at the discretion of the dean, who uses it to support their entrepreneurship initiatives. We have in Worcester Hall, we have the Keysight Laboratory. It's a company that loaded up the lab with equipment that we wanted and trained people. And so that was named for them for a limited 10-year period of time. And we have the building with the most names is the Samuel Dorsky Museum of Art, where almost all the spaces, when we built that space out, we needed money. This was before my time. And so quite a bit of money was raised to support the construction. And so most of the galleries, when you go in there, you'll notice, you walk around, you'll see most of the galleries were named. We also have a lot of spaces named in New Paltz for people without money attached. And that we don't do any longer. SUNY does not permit that. That was something that was done in the past. SUNY, I will modify it and say SUNY does permit it, but it has to be a figure who is really a kind of public figure with a lot of honor attached. So typically all of our naming opportunities are attached to a philanthropic gift that supports the institution. But the Dorsky Museum, most of those galleries, there's a few left. And so those have been mapped out. And in fact, the price has gone up because it's, there's not much inventory left. But most of our donors are interested in endowed funds, meaning direct student support or faculty support. So these are the minimums, and this is just a very short list of a longer list of that shows you what it costs to create a new fund with a name on it. So a named endowed chair, for example, we have the Ottaway visiting professor, which Jim Ottaway named 10 years ago for his father, and with a gift of $1 million. And I should tell you that our endowment has done well in the last few years, and that is now doubled in value, which means that we have twice the amount of money to bring in visiting journalism professors. So these are essentially generally considered minimums. Many of our donors love scholarship funds, endowed funds. Several of you on this call have one, President Christian and Eli and Susan Bosch and others. So we are really fortunate to have these endowed funds that support our students in perpetuity. And I think that is probably it in my very short summary presentation. I will end by saying a reminder, because I have to do this, forgive me, but if you would like to make a gift, we encourage you, all gifts are welcome of any amount, and whatever is near and dear to your heart, we can find a place for it here at SUNY New Paltz. We also have an extraordinary student crisis fund that Stephanie Blaisdell, VP Blaisdell, started, and that provides funds for students who are in need and immediate funds in the form of micro grants up to $1,000. Here you go, pay for that car that you need to get to school, that repair, whatever it is, pay for some food. So that is really critical fund as well. So that is my presentation. I will stop sharing if I can figure out how to do that. I did.
Well, thank you, Erica.
Questions?
And I'm absolutely amazed, having been involved probably over 30 years with the foundation initially, and then with the council and foundation when I was permitted to be on both, and then to continue. And you've just built year after year on success, on success, and on success. And I want to thank you for that, because there's so many students and faculty and staff as well have benefited, but most especially the students and the students in need. And you have foresight, insight, and now you have a lot of momentum, and you're on a roll, and we hope that it continues. And was apropos to what I was going to mention kind of at the conclusion of the meeting, but I'm one of these people who believes in repetition. So I would just, again, always urge everybody here and your friends and family as well. At the end of the year, we're all going to be bombarded with requests. And I would like you to all honor this institution and the students in need, certainly with contributions. And the one that I think is near and dear always is the Student Crisis Fund. And that's for opportunities where people, maybe their parent lost a job or they lost their part-time job and they're right on the cusp of graduating, but just don't have $100 or $1,000. And it might not sound like a lot to you, but it's crucial to them to get them from here and get them out, get them to finish the semester or finish their degree. And it is essential. And when they have nowhere else to turn, that's where the crisis fund comes in. And it is extremely meaningful. And it's one that I always, at the end of the meetings when I was not acting chair, but would always ask that people think of that on the council and everybody else to think about giving to that fund, certainly. Also, the EOP program, we have the opportunity of a matching grant, so you get more bang for your buck and have more of a positive effect. And that, again, is something I would urge all of us to think seriously about our charity, our philanthropy, some of the benefits that we've all received, to share those good things that have come to us, to others who are more in need. My story is I would be absolutely nowhere if it wasn't for scholarship. And scholarships made the difference in my life. And I've been very fortunate to be able to give back. But I was the beneficiary of not just the State Regents Scholarship, but the Lions Club, the Kiwanis Club, the Student Council, the Rotary out of Kingston High School, when they were the only scholarships. And that gave me the opportunity to go to a state school and get a public education. And I am forever grateful. And I think we all should be grateful for where we are. And it gives you the opportunity to make somebody anonymously happy and help somebody. So it's just something at the end of the year, I'd like you all to think seriously. And there's so many good causes. I know we're bombarded and spread thin, but I think that education is at the root of what can help people, can help somebody not just become a teacher or a farmer, but can give somebody dignity and give them the ability to feel good about themselves and then get the momentum to be successful and then pass it on to help others. So I'm very much a proponent and urge you all to look to the institution to give at home and to help. So and I could go on and on but as the lawyer, usually the judge keeps, or my wife keeps going like this. So, but I just wanted you to think seriously of that. And it's something I think that you'll feel good about. If you want to feel good about yourself, the secret is to make people around you happy. And even though they may not be around you, those people anonymously will be very thankful. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Eli. Eli is really has helped many institutions in the Hudson Valley, Eli and Susan, and
It's the,
changed a lot of lives. Right, Julie?
I don't know anything, I've never come up with anything better than education. I really
that's
don't,
great.
you know, I mean, food, we of course help the hungry, sincerely, but how do you make people not hungry is get them an education. But, it's hard to learn without, when you're hungry, but, I always believe in education, first and foremost. Now, we're
Erica, in your report, you mentioned that you seem to be able to raise more money for programs than for scholarship. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I do. We had two programs over the course of the campaign in particular, and things that fell into that bucket. One was the Dorsky Museum. So gifts of art, gifts of cash, the Dorsky Museum Gala that we do every year, that all counted into that. That's a big source of people. It's people who come to campus maybe for the first time and get involved, and it's at the heart of campus. It's very central, it's very visible. People like art. Now it's expanded with an education program, so there's a lot of outreach into the community and schools and so forth. So that is a program that's attracted a lot of support historically. and has a very active advisory board. The other program that really garnered a lot of support was our Hudson Valley Additive Manufacturing Center, with leadership support from the Dyson Foundation, from Central Hudson, and from many, many donors. Much of that building was equipped thanks to private support, the actual 3D printing material. And they got a lot of press, as you might remember. They have done a lot of good things during the pandemic. They produced, gosh, Don, do you remember 2,000 face shields? It was, they turned into a production machine for hospitals and nursing homes in the Hudson Valley, and just really gave back to the community, have done so much good in the area. And so those two, they're very public. They've gotten a lot of PR, but other programs include every time somebody supports a lecture series, for example. We have a number of extraordinary lecture series around campus. We have, anytime somebody supports a department, for example, somebody says, I just want to give money to the School of Business to expand their entrepreneurship program, or there's money for liberal arts and sciences. We got funds for a couple of anti-Semitism related lectures through both the Resnick program as well as private support for liberal arts and sciences. People supporting Black Studies, for example, or any of our departments or programs where it's not going as a scholarship to a student, but it's saying, here's money for programming. And the other big program that we got support for a couple of years ago is for mental health. One of our very generous donors founded a program called the Student Psychological Resilience Project, which provides that, which that actually does have a scholarship component, but it trains students to go out and work with their fellow students to stave off mental health problems before they arise, and give people coping skills. And so those are, and one more I'm remembering. The other very big program that we've done, that Stephanie's department and administers, which is our Kressner Autism Spectrum program, which created special classes and mentoring here on campus for students who are on the autism spectrum, who might need some extra training, as well as preparation for getting internships and going out into the job market. And so those are some signature programs that come to mind. I'm sure those are others, but that's what it was. And very often, someone who has been an entrepreneur will have an idea of something that they want to create. There's not always a sweet spot with us. So sometimes we've had to say, no, we don't do that. But a lot of times we're able to work with them and create a program that involves both student scholarships as well as some money to maybe hire a consultant or do some training or something like that. And that's always very exciting to work on.
So Erica, you asked how many face shields the Hudson Valley Additive Manufacturing Center developed, in collaboration with some partners. It was 32,725.
And I said 2,000. Look at that. Boy, was I off.
32, yeah.
32,000 face shields during COVID, because they couldn't have classes in there. And so the staff worked nonstop, and students who were on campus. So that's the kind of community impact that a lot of our, so, you have a donor, they buy some 3D printing equipment, and boom, the whole Hudson Valley benefits. And anyway, I could just go on and on, as I'm sure you can tell, but I will not.
Huh. Oh, well, Eric, I don't want, me, I don't want to cut you off because, I'm glad that Ronnie asked the question, because it does explain things and, where the numbers come from. And, the push from a lot of individuals is for scholarship, but then on the other side, from business, there can be a symbiotic relationship, but the beneficiary are certainly the students as well, when they have equipment to work on and can learn in different ways and then come back out into the community. So it's kind of, fundraising is all encompassing, and they all have the same objective, to make things better for the students and and to even help the faculty, give them some incentive and encouragement, and by the same token, act as a catalyst to the students. So it's kind of interesting how you really need it all. And as the need is never ending, and it's year by year, and the students change, and the momentum is certainly in the right direction. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, Shelley.
So it's no surprise that our very own Erica Marks is the recipient of the Hudson Valley Magazine's Women in Business Award 2021.
Not surprising. Well
Not
earned.
surprising.
Thank you, Shelley. I'm
Congratulations.
blushing. Thank you. All right, so this is now I'm gonna embarrass Shelley right back, but we you know, a lot of institutions I've worked at, you hire an outside firm to do everything. I mean, you hire outside designers when you do a campaign, because you're essentially taking on a mega project. And except for one consultant who helped us a bit, Shelley's team did every single bit of the website, the materials, the every printed material that we had. They did it. Every single bit was done in-house, and it's gorgeous. And I know you got mailed piles of stuff over the time, but we had such a close relationship. So it definitely takes a village.
Thank you, Erica.
Talent really helps.
Yeah.
And to apropos to everybody here, you know, the stardust that comes falling out of them on people around New Paltz certainly helps as well. And you know, the luster that the institution has generates fundraising, generates support out not only for individuals, but to businesses to help to keep the momentum going. So your good efforts as ambassador as well. Okay. So Ron, maybe you can give us a brief update about the presidential search.
Sure. My comments are going to be brief. Primarily, as I reported the last time, the committee has been formed. They've been charged by the chancellor, and RPA has begun its task of receiving applications. The final date for the applications to be due are on the 29th of this month. So basically, we just have to wait to see how many people have applied, and we know that there are applications coming in, but we really won't know anymore until after the 29th of November. And during that time, the committee is, I guess, preparing itself for the task of going through whatever amount of applications that come in. There's also a website which anybody can look at and can refer people to get updates or at least information about where the search is, or if you know of anybody who's interested in applying. It also seems that in this process, most people, I guess, in terms of confidentiality, tend to wait till the last week possible before they will submit their applications. So we're looking forward to the 29th and for our first meeting in the December for the search committee, when we'll be able to look at the applications that come in and have them broken down by tiers of those that basically fit our criteria, those who may fit our criteria, and those who don't fit our criteria. So you'll have to wait at least until after December, when we'll at least put on the website about how many applications we've had, and we'll move on from there. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them, and if not, have a nice Thanksgiving, and I'll turn us back over to Eli.
Thank you, Ron. So we're going to wait with bated breath for the rollout. It's just starting to boil now, right?
Yes.
And, like most people, they wait to the end. I kind of get that on confidentiality because people are sensitive in the positions they're in. And in that regard, sometimes less is better. Less means less time to have it.
Well, and I think also the best candidates spend time researching the institution and tailoring their application as much as they can to the credentials some of the earliest applications are a little bit casual.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, this is just a kind of like future housekeeping. If anybody has anything they'd like to add to an agenda, you could just contact myself or Shelley. Just in a general way, if anything you'd like to discuss or a question you'd like to be answered in anticipation. I know we're not gonna have a meeting for a while, but just something that comes to your mind, just don't hesitate to do that. We'll review it and see if it's something that, it's appropriate for the council to look at. Okay. We're not gonna have a budget report, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that means we're broke. That's the joke. That's not true. It's not true. And from my own personal perspective, I'm not that really interested in the budget because I would say always just raise more money. And that's how you get things paid. But, the state controls things, which brings me to the political statement I was going to make. Well, since I went to college, it used to be state supported. And everybody thought that state schools, the kids went free, the students went free because the state paid for everything. And that's been diminishing year over year in terms of the allocation of funds from the state. And it's more been on the backs of the students and their family to pay for public education, and specifically here in New Paltz. And of course, that trend has not been reversed. And consequently, the budget and the allocations here to our institution become less and less a fraction of what the university needs to be supported. So what can we do about that? Well, it's state, and there are going to be gubernatorial candidates, and there's going to be assembly and senate and candidates. And I would urge all who could do so to speak on behalf of the university system, the system-wide for the funds that should come from the state to reverse that trend, to stop it and make the state system what it was once, was really supported by the state. And it's kind of not the whipping boy, but it's one of those areas that politically can get cut because the constituency is not that strong. Other constituencies speak louder. And so raise your voice, your contacts. I know we have Kevin Cahill here in Kingston. He's very, very, very supportive. He's an alum and kind of gets it. But then, things roll out of the governor's office, and just something to have in your mind when you can have an opportunity to advocate. Do so, and maybe we can change it. So I just wanted to put that out there. So does anybody else have anything else? I'll repeat myself about the Student Crisis Fund and your philanthropy when you get at the end of the year and want to reduce your tax burden. This is certainly something you should think about seriously. And I don't think we're going to be seeing each other until the spring semester. That we'll be scheduling things. By then, things should be boiling on the presidential search. It should be interesting. And I wish you all nice Thanksgiving and probably happy holidays. So I'll probably see you next year unless somebody has something to add. So I'm going to thank you all for attending and giving us your attention and being advocates. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care,
Uh,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I offer to adjourn.
Unanimous?
Oh.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.